Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Alan Schimmel, CEO, Editor-in-Chief, Techstrong Group, DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Cloud Native Now, excuse me, Techstrong.ai, Techstrong TV, and even Digital CXO. Welcome. Welcome to a live roundtable edition of our DevOps Unbound show. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time or are not familiar with DevOps Unbound, DevOps Unbound is a twice a month show where we delve into topics of interest to DevOps and DevOps engineers and DevOps people and those working in DevOps. About once every 2 or 3 shows, we're lucky enough to do this show in a live roundtable format where not only are we blessed to have great panel members to discuss topics with, but we're doubly blessed to have you, our audience, involved in steering the show, right? And by that, we mean we want you to tell us what's important to you. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your comments. We want you to participate in the discussion. And the way we do that is in our Big Marker webinar system here that you are viewing us in most through your web browser. It's pretty cool. No plugins or anything like that. No separate apps. And for most of you, in the right-hand corner of your browser, you will see the Big Marker Communications window. And you'll see, hopefully, you'll see the word chat, and that's a little bolder. QA polls, handouts are grayed out. Well, right in that chat section there's public and private or Twitter. We don't use the Twitter chat for this. But if you put anything in public, everyone here sees it, not only our panel members, but all of the people logged in as well. And I know many of you are popping in and writing in where you're from, as we've asked you to do, just to make sure the chat works. But it's also, look, I've been on the internet since the internet went commercial, Netscape browser beta. And it always amazes me when I see the amount of people, not the amount of people, but I see where people come from on the internet. So, we have Bangalore, India, Montana, Baja, California, Miami, Erie, PA, and everywhere in between. It's always a worldwide audience. Welcome and thank you. Of course, don't just tell us where you're from. We want to hear your questions. A little bit else about DevOps Unbound. We've been doing it now for over 2 years. And our partner in DevOps Unbound are our good friends at Tricentis, worldwide leader in continuous testing. And really couldn't ask for a better partner to work with. They between helping us find great speakers and panel members and working with us on agendas, they're just a pleasure to work with as a partner, and they're also a pleasure to work with as your partner in testing. So please check them out, Tricentis. Today's episode is on mobile applications, mobile excellence, mastering mobile excellence, actually. Strategies for seamless app experiences and user retention. All of you registered to be here, so you read the abstract. I'm not going to read it to you. But what I would like to do is introduce you to our knockout panel here. We got some great people on here. I want to start off by introducing you to Simona Domazatoska. I had it in the prelim.
You got it, Alan.
I got it? All right.
Yeah.
So, Simona Domazatoska. Simona, welcome. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about yourself with the audience.
Sure. Thanks, Alan, for having me on here again. So I've been working in the software quality assurance industry for about 5 years with Tricentis, and currently I'm looking at how do customers leverage mobile and AI test automation technologies for their IT modernization strategies. And having studied anthropology, what particularly interests me is how do humans and how do our customers interact with our tools and our products, which I study and I research, and I send that feedback to our product managers to help build better innovation. So thanks for having me, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. And Simona, where are you joining us from today?
So you might have seen that I have light in the background. It's approaching 7 p.m. my time. I'm in Vienna, Austria. So I'm covering the European time zone.
Excellent. And welcome from Vienna. Welcome to New York, my hometown. I see got some folks from New York here. Exciting. Let me introduce you to our next panel member. He's our top gun. Maverick Turner, from also from Tricentis. Mav, tell them a little bit about you.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, Mav Turner. I'm based out of Austin, Texas, where it is bright and sunny, natural light behind me, as you can all see, and very hot. It's finally cooling down to fall temperatures of 90 degrees, so it's nice. People getting out the fall gear. But I've been at Tricentis for about 18 months now. I'm the CTO of our DevOps business unit. When I tell people that, they're like, what does that mean? Basically, when we think about Tricentis, we serve a broad market, and we're constantly thinking about, as teams evolve their practices, their engineering practices, wherever they're at in their life cycle, how can we ensure that we have products and practices that can help them with that transformation and just get continuously better? And so today we're talking about that in the context of mobile. So that's going to be fun to get deep on. But Tricentis covers, mobile, web, application specific, desktop, pretty much any application or system under test that you can imagine. We're working to make that easier for you to build apps and run apps and ensure that those are working as expected.
Excellent. If you're breaking out full gear at 90 degrees, my God.
Seriously, it's much better than 110.
You've been flying too many planes. All right. Our third panel member, and certainly not least, is Preeti Agarwal. Preeti joins us today. Preeti, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Alan. Thank you. And hello, everyone. I am Preeti Agarwal, and I'm thrilled to be here with you all today. I would first and foremost like to express my heartfelt thanks to Techstrong for extending this invitation to be a panelist today, and it's an honor to be here. So about me, with over 16 years of experience in engineering, I have a passion for building startups, and I work for this wonderful organization called Founder and Lightning, which is a startup studio. Again, we build startup, we work with founders to get their ideas into the digital products. And my expertise encompasses this coding, agile methodologies, and DevOps, and which allow me to navigate the tech world with confidence. But beyond my tech skills, I'm deeply committed to maintaining coding standards and sharing my knowledge through training and mentoring. And so with that said, let's embark on this exploration together, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Really, thank you. Our last member for me to introduce today is my co-host partner here on DevOps Unbound, as well as at Techstrong. He's the Techstrong CTO, as well as general manager, founding research principal at Techstrong Research, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitch, how are you?
Good, Alan. I think you introduced me well. Thank you very much. It's good to be here. And thanks to our panelists for joining us. I want to remind folks that are in our audience, we love to have you participate on chat. So please join in, comment, question, ideas, reactions. We'll see us talking on chat as well. So please engage with us. This is a great roundtable forum to do that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mitch. We had a QA question right off the bat. It was more of a question of would we be covering security aspects of mobile and mobile apps in general, covering cross-sectional platforms. So if you've ever sat in on anything Mitchell and I do, we always cover security because our backgrounds are security folks for 20-something years. So yes, we will be. And so consider that answered. Guys, I wanted to start right off, though, at a high level of, hey, mastering mobile excellence, strategies for seamless app experiences and user retention. And almost by definition, to me, I read that and yes, we're all on mobile. Yes, we all use mobile apps. Yes, a lot of our mobile app experiences stink, right? We've all, we could probably count on one hand the amount of mobile apps where we'll say, wow, that was really well done, right? That's a great mobile app. Just about every other mobile app, and there's hundreds of them if you go through your iPhone or your Android or your tab or whatever, we're all using 100 apps are on our phone for most of us, right? How many of them are just not that good, frankly? And for a lot of reasons. Poor UI design, poor performance, poor feature set, useless. I've got a lot of useless apps on my phone. have we learned anything? And I always felt it was because mobile app development was a work in progress, right? It was emerging practices, not best practices. Are we in a place to say we can master this? Anyone can feel free to jump in, and we'll all jump in after that. I mean,
I'm happy to
go ahead,
take
Matt.
a run at it and see where it goes. I think your point about the technology adoption curve timeline, like how long have we really been doing this? Can we say we've mastered it? I would argue no, we can't claim mastery, but we can claim that we've come a very long way, and there are some things that we know to do that can drive best practices that can actually help with that, that user retention, app experience. That is it a useless app or a useful app question? I think we've made massive progress there, but look, the technology is still drastically changing underneath us, and that's, I think, one of the challenges that we face is whether that's on the hardware side or whether that's on the software side, right? I was talking with a customer last week, and they said, hey, what's your support for foldable devices? How does that change the app experience? And how do I test when you fold the device, right? So like the form factors that we're dealing with are still changing very quickly here. And there's a lot of innovation still going to this space. So I would posit that mastery is, a far reach, but we do definitely, I think we've moved from the emerging practices to a lot of the best practices of the last couple of years that have emerged for what that experience should be, how to think about it. I do believe have made a lot of progress, and that if you're building an app today from scratch, you're in a much better place than 5 years or 10 years ago on that. So that's where I'll start the response from.
Sure.
Maybe just to add, if I may, just to add what Mav is talking about, I think it's important to mention DevOps is also about continuous improvement. And what we see with our customers is that their maturity practices are getting better when it comes to mobile testing. So it's no longer just about manual testing, but we're seeing a lot of adoption of real device clouds, virtual device clouds. So a lot of customers are increasing their awareness around how to provide and a better quality application. So even if you look at the topic of accessibility, which is very close to my heart, you do see that there is heightened awareness around this topic, and a lot of developers are embedding those practices early into their software development lifecycle, which is certainly important when you're releasing quality to the users and customers.
Anybody else? No. So here's my 2 cents on some of this, which is, we some mobile apps are no more than a website wrapped in an app, right? They're taking what you would get by opening a mobile browser and putting in an app wrapper that you downloaded and in there. And to me, that's not really taking advantage of the medium, right? That if all you're doing is taking your website and putting a mobile wrapper around it, if you will, just tell people to go to the website, right? But yet we still see so much of that, and to me, it's almost a lazy person or a cheaper way out. Is no, we got a mobile app, but it's not. When we talk about mobile app best practices, right? To me, I think it has to start with taking advantage of the medium, of the fact that this is a mobile device, and almost by definition, it should have a different interface, a different criteria of success than your website. Preeti, what do you think about kind of that notion, and then how does that manifest itself?
DevOps definitely is the secret sauce behind successful mobile app development. And in fact, we use mobile DevOps in a day-to-day practice at our company, and we have seen the difference of DevOps not being there versus DevOps being there now. And the automation, as Simona added, that test automation and the monitoring and the feedback collection of those tests and everything via this DevOps automation is really important, and it helps the entire team, not just the mobile testing team, but I would say when we have these product managers or we have other stakeholders working in the team where they're not that technical to go ahead and look into these coding errors and all that, or get the feedback in a technical way, these automations and the reports which are generated for everyone to read and understand are very helpful. So definitely, the speed, the efficiency, quality, consistency of all these things get much better when we have DevOps in practice.
Alan, I think
Agreed.
part of what you're bringing out is um, we all have an expectation of what an experience is going to be like when we're using a mobile app versus on a web page versus on a TV versus in a full-blown app on our computer. And part of that problem with just taking a web page and stuffing it into an app and here you go, it's a mobile app, is that experience isn't the mobile experience that people expect. So part of a testing strategy and our design strategy is designing the experience for what customers have. We're all used to it. So I want to add something to the list. When I see a little customer here, it doesn't say app item. Know that. Learn that by using that. There's a lot of those things that you can adopt because it's already somewhat of a norm and maybe well accepted. Versus let's do something radically different. Might work out great, but it also might be great.
Hey, Mitch, I don't know if it was me. Are you guys having a hard time hearing them?
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
I think your audio kind of gave out there, so I'm not sure if we
Okay.
caught the whole piece
I'll
of
switch
that.
here.
Yeah, if you want to switch while we're doing that. Hey, while Mitch is doing that, though, there was something up in the Q&A someone asked, which is, look, when you're releasing apps, whether it be to the App Store or Google Play Store, it's this person's understanding you have to provide design, architecture, and how you're dealing with securing data, permissions, etc. But you do not share the code. As far as I know, that is correct. And do you obfuscate or encrypt your code to prevent decompiling?
So yeah, this is so no, you don't need to have your raw source code submitted as part of the process. That's correct. Do you need to obfuscate it? Do you need to add any flags on your compiler to do that? What's your use case? What are you trying to do? Probably not for most people, to be honest. I would argue that the more important thing is the data. So any customer data that you're dealing with, that you need to treat differently. Your raw application source code, like, do you want to obfuscate that? Maybe. What's the value there? What do you think the risk is somebody decompiling it and trying to, like, have you put in some really novel IP there that's not protected in other ways? Then maybe, are you putting it in markets where there's a higher risk that somebody will take advantage of? Maybe. In general, in most cases, it's more about the data you're managing, and which is why they want to see all of the details about that. That's the critical part, right? And making sure it's encrypted in transit and in rest, and that any third-party communication you're doing have encryption handoff. That you're using security tokens. So, like, to me, that's what I would say is I worry less about your source code. You're going to compile it. You're going to submit that application. Yes, somebody can download your app from the store, get in there, but, like, what's the thing you're trying to protect? You really have truly unique IP that's being delivered in the app. Most cases, that's not true. Most of the time, but there are some scenarios where that's the case. Most of the time, your main concern should be how are you handling customer data? How are you handling your data? Where are you sending that? That's where you're going to want to spend most of your time.
I agree with you. And actually, participant 659, I don't know who that is, but that's what they've assigned him. I think he hits it too, Mav. In the era of cloud applications, obfuscation is not really necessary. People don't get access to that kind of source code and stuff. The app doesn't live with you. You just see a front end for the most part.
You have to be really motivated to go in there and, like, this, yeah.
Yep.
And
hey, Mitch, I want you to come
going back to the cloud, right? Sorry, Mitch.
Yeah, it's front end. Mitch, I wanted to give you a chance to come back to you here. Hopefully your audio's working. No. All right, Mitch will be back. I'll be back. While we are doing that, though, let me return to the issue of testing for mobile apps, if we can, for a second. One of the things that I think it confuses me, so I'm sure it confuses people out there, is it used to be mobile testing in and of itself was a domain, right? There was a whole ecosystem of mobile testing, right? People who just specialize in testing mobile apps. However, there still is, but there's so many different aspects to testing mobile today, right? We test user experience. We test unit testing, scalability and functionality and security, and all of these different domains, if you will, that fall under the broad testing QA banner. Is it really the case where mobile is a separate animal anymore, or is there so much overlap that it maybe isn't?
Maybe I can take this one, Alan. I
Sure.
think that mobile testing is definitely a different beast. So I think the main concept that you need to grasp when you're testing a mobile application is you're not just testing the mobile app, the software, but you're actually testing how does that software interact in the actual device and the actual hardware. And there's lots of things that could be happening. So think about the device. You could be switching from a 3G to a 5G network. You could have low battery. You could be receiving an SMS notification. You could be connecting to the public Wi-Fi. And then think about where your users may be. They could be in so many different scenarios. They could be in an elevator, at an airport, remote kind of places. So I think that's precisely the challenge, that it's not just about the application and the software, it's really about the device. And that's the challenge, I would say, when that's the kind of difference that we're dealing with when it comes to, mobile testing.
Agree with
Absolutely.
Simona. Adding to what she told already, totally agree with what the input that she gave. But apart from that, also we face challenges with mobile. It's difficult when we compare testing on other platforms and mobile. It becomes more challenging to test on mobile. Also because not just the other measures, but the UI experience also change with device to device, because the resolution, the screen size, the make, everything changes, especially on Android. iOS is again a simpler one, though, so it's a simple beast. But I would say Android is even more complicated. And also, when there are different operating version systems, it's a small device with limited resources on it, the RAM, the CPU processing speed, etc. And it changes on every device. So it's not necessary that if your application is performing well on one device, it would perform the same on the other. So you need to make sure that when you test these mobile applications, we have to test it in a very robust way, where we are testing it on different type of mobile devices, different operating system versions, and then again, you need to consider battery consumption. You have to do the performance optimization. You have to make sure it is accessible to the global audience. Network variability is what Simona already added. And operating system diversity is one main thing that I also see is challenging when it comes to testing mobile devices.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing,
Um,
Alan, can I go back to something you said earlier about taking advantage of the medium? And so if you are taking advantage of the medium, the more you do that, the more unique that testing becomes. If you are doing what we were talking about earlier, you're just stuffing a web page into that app, okay, yeah, you're probably not going to need to do that. But the more you're using the unique sensors, the more you're using the unique applications of that, the more you need to test to make sure you understand what's going to happen there. And so I think that those go hand in hand in a really and that's the point, right? Like, what is your business outcome from this application? Are you really trying to do something interesting? And also from an architecture perspective, if you really have if you have a web app that's trying to do one thing, your mobile app's doing something different, or maybe they're doing the same thing, presenting the same data, they should be hitting the same API. And how do you test that API? Maybe the same. What you do with that data, where you pull those other inputs, all those will vary depending on whether I'm on a desktop, a tablet, a mobile device, or IoT as you get even deeper into the different types of devices.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Alan, I don't know if I'm back. Can you all hear me?
No, you're back, Mitch. You're back.
Yes.
Good,
See,
good.
I
Good.
updated my Chrome before
I can
the
hear you.
webinar.
I hit the maintenance one. I didn't say that before, but suddenly I do. What I was thinking about too, kind of to your point, Mav, is there are very few really standalone mobile apps that like self-contained. Maybe your calculator, but that even has like ads in it, right? Almost all apps really are doing API calls back to data located in the cloud, services in the cloud, other applications that it's using, third-party services, all of that. So testing mobile is not only testing functionality of the app and does it properly work with all those things that it's connecting to, but also what happens when those things aren't there or they aren't there, like my audio was a couple minutes ago. What if it's not so good? What happens? Does the app go wonky? Does it freeze? Does it say, hey, sorry, but you can do this now? So there's a lot more complexity in scenarios of testing mobile apps today. I wish it was just like, hey, does it give you the right calculation when you press enter? But I think those days are long past.
Yes, they are. Preeti said something yesterday that not yesterday, earlier, that made me think, and that was sort of the role of DevOps in mobile app, if you will. And one of the principles of DevOps, one of the ways of DevOps, whatever, is the whole idea of feedback loops with iteration and reiteration. And in my mind, that is probably the biggest or one of the biggest advancements we've made in mobile app development, right? If you guys remember back to when iPhones first came out, Android first came out, I had a Windows phone back then, right? They updated the apps about as often as we used to update our desktop apps. If you were lucky, once a quarter, more likely twice a year. And then all of a sudden, as a result of DevOps and feedback loops and 10x releases a day and stuff like this, that DevOps kind of, brought to the forefront, these apps started updating daily, hourly, and if you remember, well, I don't know if you guys remember, but I'm a security dude. I wasn't so quick to update my apps. So I'd say, wait a second. I'm not updating this till I test it. I want to make sure it doesn't break other things on my phone, blah, blah, blah. Now, who does that anymore? We all have updates on automatically on our phones anyway. And, I don't even pay attention anymore when these apps update. They're updating all the time in the background, it seems. And it's a continuous improvement there. Right. And I think to me, that might be the biggest benefit from DevOps on mobile app development is the frequency of updates, the feedback loops and reiterations of it. We shouldn't lose sight of that.
Yeah, I know this is off topic a little bit from what you said, Alan, but the shift from not doing security updates to doing them as soon as they're available has been really interesting to see, right? Like, I think that's been fun. Just want to add a little comment on that before coming back to the DevOps and mobile topic. But just, since we always have to talk about security, I think that's been really interesting as we look at auto updating apps. And do we take the first one? Do we wait? Do we test? Where do we test? When do we test? Anyways, sorry, but that's a whole webinar of itself, probably.
Well, look, that's something we'll make a note of there for another webinar. Hey, I've got a really good Q&A question that I want to go over, and it's right up our alley, security stuff. From traditional security testing, from our perspective, or from your perspective, panelists, what is the list of testing that would be key? And this participant, they suggested, I don't know if it's a he or she, but they suggested SAST, secrets detection, software composition analysis, SCA, pen testing, DAST, if that's somehow applicable. Is that first of all, is that the right list? I don't know if it's the right order. I mean, we all do tend to start with SAST. Though in today's world, it seems to me SCA is first and foremost, but so much of it is open source based. Secrets detection is sort of a new hot topic
Um,
that we're looking for? Pretty, go ahead.
I think we can break this question into parts to answer this. First would be what are the key security testing methods when it comes to security securing mobile apps. There are a few key methods that you'll want to consider. Of course, SAST is like scanning the code of your application to find vulnerabilities before it even runs, and it is great for catching your coding issues very early. Then the secrets detection, it is like having a tool that looks for sensitive information, like the passwords or API keys that might be in your code. So these kind of testing actually secures your application. Then comes your SCA, which also keeps an eye on all the third party integrations that you have done in your application to make sure that they don't do any security holes or leak your information. Pen testing, of course, we all are aware of it. It's kind of hiring a hacker and trying to asking him to break your application and find if your application, if you've missed something in the security matters. But now coming to the of course, sorry, I missed DAST. Well, DAST is, this involves testing your application when it comes to running to see if it's vulnerable to the attacks. While more common for the web apps basically, it can be used for mobile apps as well, but it is more common for web apps. Now, I'll take the second part of the question would be how do I block the access to my app in regions that are considered as blacklisted, if I'm right? Yes. Now, you can use a technique called geo-blocking or geofencing. Essentially, you rely on the what I would say is IP or the geolocation to restrict the access of your app based on where the users are located. So, however, you need to make sure that users might want to again bypass these restrictions. So definitely you need to add these things in your application to block the access in blacklisted regions. And the third part I would consider is there a way to detect if the users are using VPN on my app, VPN access my app. So yes, detecting VPN access can be a little tricky because VPNs are again designed to hide users' location. And when there are some strategies that you can use to get that location, maybe you can analyze the network packets or the traffic patterns to spot anomalies that might indicate the VPN usage. And there are also third party libraries and services that specialize in VPN detection. And they analyze your network traffic behavior and then give you an integrated report. And it helps to identify if you are on a VPN connection. So if I'm, I don't know if I've covered all the parts of this question, but yeah, and other panelists
No,
can add something.
that was a fantastic answer. I think you covered more than that and better than I would have done. So excellent. And but keep in mind, guys, those are just security scans, security testing, right? Which again, going back to my point earlier, is one slice of this testing universe, right? Specifically for mobile apps. One may ask, is it doable? It's not a one-man job, that's for sure. Maybe it is with tools like Tricentis, man. Convince me. But it seems like an awful lot of work that needs to get done there.
I would agree, Ellen. And, it's kind of like there's a lot of pressure on the QA department, right? You have to answer the questions, is it secure? But then let's go a step back and ask, is it working? Is it fast, right? Is it accessible? Is the mobile app accessible, right? Does it scale, right? So there's so many different components and you just can't test it all. So what I really think is important and what we see with our customers, you need to take 3 steps back in order to go forward and understand what do you need to test first? What is critical for the business? And here you really need to work together with the product managers, developers, and testers and understand how customers are using it, what pathways are really critical. And that goes back to understanding the mobile application. How mission critical is the mobile application to the face of the business? the more mission critical that it is, and the more that it plays a pivotal role in the generation of the revenue of the business, then you really have to ensure a holistic mobile testing strategy is in place. And then sadly, like, you do have to answer all those questions, and I think that's precisely the challenge that testers face, developers face. Like, where do you start, right? So I'll leave it up to the other panelists. Maybe you have some suggestions on what approaches can we take.
I'm open. Nav, Preeti, any suggestions on how do we wrap our head?
Trying not to take too much of the microphone time here, make sure we all have a chance to comment. But I definitely can speak to that, which is, look, we segment out security a lot, and for good reason. But the reality is, it's all together. It's functional, it's security, it's performance. All these different things are super important to ensure you have a comprehensive strategy. Now, most people, if you start from scratch and you say, wow, that's a lot, where do I start? We typically see, okay, make sure it works as expected in the situations you expect your users to encounter often. You can kind of get stuck even in answering that question, but 80-20 rule is very helpful starting place. And then making sure, back to the DevOps idea, you have that continuous feedback loop. Where are users experiencing pain? Where are you seeing that drop off? That's the super critical part to prioritize the work next, because it's an infinite amount of work, right? We can spend an infinite amount of time making our apps stronger, better, faster, but making sure we're in tune with our users and what they're experiencing is the key to success there, because you're going to have to prioritize. Every team doesn't have enough resources. Every team has two goals or too much. So that prioritization exercise is super critical. And the best way to do that is stay in touch with your users, understand what they're doing, and then build your solution around that, which is a mix of tools. Vendors like us, like Tricentis, can provide a lot of tooling to help, but it's also processes and practices, and back to the core people, right? Whether they're the people building the apps or using the apps.
Yep. Mitchell, you have a question for the panel?
Yeah, I do. I'm really interested in your thoughts on this. It's been a while since I've kind of done a full mobile app development, but it seems like mobile development is sort of its own corner of the room, or has been, right? And oftentimes separate from the folks that are doing the web or doing other parts of the applications. One of the things about DevOps and Agile and things like that is help bring people together cross-functionally, cross-discipline. Do you see the mobile app development becoming closer to and integrated with, or vice versa, the kind of core development workflows? Is that starting to converge together through DevOps and processes like that, or do we have a lot of work to do there yet?
If I may say, Mitch, it's a really great question, because what we see, I think mobile is a fantastic opportunity for bringing developers and testers closer together. And particularly if you look at if you look at DevOps, and what is DevOps, right? You need to analyze where the mobile application went wrong. And so we're not only dealing with challenges of so many different types of phones out there, but we're dealing with a challenge of an explosion of different variables. What exactly went wrong in the mobile app? Because that's what it's about. It's about fixing it quickly and early and preventing failure, right? That's what quality is about. But there's so many different variables. You could have performance issues, UX related issues like blockiness, blurriness, network and connectivity related issues. There's device related issues, what Preeti mentioned before, with high battery drainage, CPU usage, and so on. So being a developer, and when you have all these variables, like, where do you even start? And so I think what's really important is to have analytics in place to work together to understand where do those failures occur. And this is where AI can precisely help. I hate to bring up the word AI, it's the word of the century, right? But this is precisely where testers and developers can come together, and we do see it a lot with our customers. So it presents a great opportunity for collaboration.
Agreed. We have a question in Q&A. I think it's in the regular chat too. In terms of updates, bug releases as part of a release patch, some apps say, hey, it didn't work for Mitchell here, right, with his Crow. In other words, when you go to start the app, it won't let you start the app until you update it. And and participant says, why don't we see more of that? Right? He sees it, he doesn't see it, consistently followed across the board. Um, I'm going to take a stab at it because I think a lot of users don't like it. I don't force me to update. I'll update in the background. I'll update when I have time, but I got something to do right now and I'll update later. Now, of course, that may lead to you not having audio during the webinar, right? It can happen as a result. But it's still, the user wants to control the time and place of update, and not when I've got something maybe mission critical going on. So to me, that's the reason why we don't see that more across the board. But maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, again, I think it. Oh, go ahead, Mitch.
No. I'll just quickly say this because I posted in chat. Some of that's very app dependent because you oftentimes see apps that have to update data structures. The databases being upgraded. Something's changed about how that's stored in the cloud. And you can argue, should you be able to, obfuscate that or mask it through APIs or whatever? But there's session state, there's cross-platform things that you might have to coordinate with. So some of that is very dependent upon like a gaming app, right? From that's on a PS5 and your mobile app or whatever, that they have to keep those things in sync. Other ones, it's like, why does my note-taking app need to be updated in order for me to use it? Can't it, kind of stay there until I want to update it? Again, a lot of it's how they build the app and design it. That's my thoughts about it. Mav, you appreciate your perspective.
Yeah, I would actually. Your gaming one is a really good example. In a shared world, if you're not on the same version, a lot of problems can be created, and there's ways to mask that. Right, a new map or new area for some game is only available once you move to the new version, or some item doesn't exist in the new world. You have to deal with that as a developer, and that complexity that gets increased by the number of permutations that you have to support slows development down, creates issues on the security side for sure if you're having to support different architectures on the back end to support the old one. And so here's an argument for forcing users to update regularly, right? Decreasing the cost of development teams. Some organizations, I'm sure we've all had problems like Mitch just had, where I've been presenting and Windows Update is just like, you're going down now, and it's out. There's pros and cons of that, but the other side of this is the more complex your environment you're in, and the more dependencies you have from other systems and their version updates. That's really where this kind of forced update can be problematic. And this is where, again, honestly, not to make the product pitch, but like why Tricentis has a lot of value in these organizations. What happens? How do I ensure when I update this component, what breaks? When I do all of these things, because it's not, in some environments, I have a single app. Great, you update your app. Even if you have millions of users, that app is isolated and contained, and it's not that big of a deal. You look at a Fortune 500 company making a change to their ERP, which has hundreds of other dependencies across the environment, and even if a mobile app is part of that workflow, how do you ensure that those changes behave as expected? And what's the cost of failure, right? So if you don't have that, now this bug is in production, the customer's data gets lost, right? Oh, it's 1% of customers' data. Well, did they have service cut off? Did they get billed incorrectly because of this data? Like, the complexities that come through in these larger environments with these interdependencies, I think are really where that problem gets created, and where, again, that's why Tricentis eventually built products around this, because it's such a hard problem to solve on your own, and frankly, you can't today with the level of complexity.
Agreed.
Adding a bit more to what other members have already told, in some cases where you want to update your app, um, uh, those updates doesn't involve your UI alterations or UI updates, I would want you to also consider over the air updates, which indeed will fit into the context of enforcing app updates for mobile applications. So OTAs will allow you to deliver your app updates directly to users without, but the catch here is, without it cannot update your UI thing. So whenever you want to release a patch or an update for on business rules or calculations or logical part where your UI is not disturbed, you can do that without deploying it to App Store or having your app to be reviewed by the stores. You can just send the updates with something called OTA, in general over the air updates, and I think that will help you a lot in encouraging this force updates, unless it has any UI related updates.
Yes. Hey, we've got a bunch more questions. Things are just we're coming up, near the top of the hour, but the audience is heating up. So another participant asks, do you see that companies who spend a significant amount of time doing customer discovery in the concept prior to the actual design, development, testing of the app becoming more successful quicker? I mean, Mitch, this was kind of your key to success when we worked together. It's still secure, right?
It was, yeah. It's there was a time where I spent about 2 years on the road doing we call the user testing, really design testing, and part of it was just getting the app concept right. And then I did this again on a mobile app. I did it in kind of mid 2000s, but I think today there's the idea is to try to get your product in front of customers as soon as you can when it's in a state where you can, sort of that MVP idea. Um, because I like to say no plan is every plan is wrong as soon as you hit the save button, right? What you're thinking is going to happen is not what's going to happen. So, and the only thing that really matters is what people are going to use and how they're going to use it, and if that's going to meet a need that they have. So the more you can build user feedback or data collection, telemetry collection about information about the mobile app that's running, and you use that information to help improve the app. I mean, we have so many more tools available to us now, as well as sitting down and recording someone using an app, doing things like that. But all those are valuable tools, and definitely are some things not to be ignored or kind of lost on.
Maybe
Agreed.
just to add as well to Mitch and participant 613, we do work with a lot of customers organizations that do this prior market research very heavily. So they look at, where do their customers sit? So if you look at, for instance, online fashion retailers, mobile apps are very critical to their business, right? So a lot of the organizations do their research up front. They understand what different mobile apps they're using, what different versions, so they really can pinpoint all those aspects in advance. And not just that, but if we talk about user retention, what we find is that those very highly mature companies, almost digital natives that have this, good mobile testing strategy in place, they they embed features in their mobile apps where they are connecting and communicating with the customer, right? So they understand exactly what the customer's needs are, and they embed those features into the mobile apps. I mean, yeah, if you look at Spotify, for instance, they have all these different cool features like daily mixes, discovery weekly, or specific playlists based on the listening habits of their users. And that's what makes them stand out, because they really understand the personal needs of their customers. So I think that those companies go always like a step further, and they're trying to engage on a daily basis in a conversation with their users to build those features. And by the way, that goes beyond testing, that goes into human interaction, and that's something AI can't replace.
Agreed.
I totally agree to what Simona has said, because I work, having working at a startup studio where we build startups every few months. I understand the importance of the discovery phase before we actually jump on to the development. So apart from the benefits that Maeve and Simona have already mentioned, it's also, apart from the founder who is actually analyzing the idea into more depth to understand if he really wants to do it, it's also a good phase of discovery for the team who is going to implement it. And you get to interact with the founder, you get to know the founder also as a team, and also you build a kind of understanding and a rapport already within the team to start with that wonderful flow of bringing your idea into digital products. And also I feel as a team which is going to understand your project and bring it to live application, it's important for them also to equally understand that idea in depth, buy that idea, and believe in that idea. Now, believe is something I would emphasize on, because unless you believe in the product, you would not be able to really give that 100% and make that dream come true, feeling for the product. So I think the discovery phase is one where you as a developer or as a implementation company also gets to believe and live the idea, not just the founder. So I think that phase is also, apart from all the tech discovery, the understanding, the competitor analysis, market analysis, etc. It is also important for this, the belief thing, which I truly believe in, that it's really important for me to believe in the idea if I really want to make that product a great product.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Hey guys, I'm going to let you come back in a second, but I a little housekeeping. We always give out 4 Amazon gift cards to audience members on all of these DevOps Unbound live roundtables, and we're running low on time. I want to make sure I get it out there. The winners for this month's Amazon gift cards are Cassie C, Bobin S, Crystal M, and Brad P. Our Techstrong Learning team will reach out to you and get you your gift cards. Thanks for participating, and thanks for coming to today's webinar roundtable discussion. All right, that out of the way. Simone, I think you were going to say something.
No,
No?
that's it. I was just agreeing
Oh,
with Preeti. I liked her comment.
I think we were all agreeing. We were all agreeing. Um, so last question here in Q&A. Could we chime in on the privacy aspects which are taking center stage? Things like CCPA, GDPR, and soon to be DORA, right? Over in the EU, DORA is getting real. Um, Anybody want to comment on that in terms of mobile app development?
I'm happy to comment on it, but Simona, since you're in Austria, in the middle of it, I don't know, you may be able to provide a little bit unique perspective there.
Yeah, so we've been speaking to quite a lot of customers in the kind of banking and financial services industry that are quite concerned about DORA. And DORA, which stands for Digital Operational Resilience Act, is an EU law that's about to come in force, and that really puts pressure on organizations to ensure that their applications are always performing. And that means they need to have testing in place, and that's in order to prevent serious, basically, things going wrong. For instance, customers accessing their bank accounts, not being able to make transactions. So that's it's a critical thing right now that we see banks are trying to adopt more performance testing, and that encompasses not only mobile but web as well. So um, regulation and compliance is definitely one event that we're seeing that's going to drive the even more adoption of performance testing, particularly for mobile apps.
And also,
Absolutely.
uh, how do mobile developers handle these kind of ensure these kind of privacy regulations and ensure the compliances? Developers need to prioritize privacy from the design stage itself. You can't wait for your application to go live and then figure out something and come back and put the prioritize these privacy settings later stages, but it needs to be enforced right from the design stage. Like data minimization, collect the data as much as it is necessary or needed for app functionality. You need not collect more data and increase more risk for your application. So be senseful of what data you want to collect, and implement a clear and user friendly consent mechanisms for data collection, so that you have consent for every data that you're collecting, and it is only what you actually need for app functionality. Allow the users to of course, this is part of, again, when you release the application, it is a mandate now that you need to allow users to delete their data as and when they want. When you delete the account or delete their membership, then you need to delete their data, and you need to ensure data security measures to protect your user information. And then again, the privacy policies are something that you should be made very transparent, and etc. So um, mobile app developers can actually handle these cross-border data transfers And GDPR is something that will restrict your data transfers outside your borders, and developers should consider measuring these things right at the right time. And yeah, GDPR compliance can also simplify this process.
So that's an interesting take, how it will simplify. A lot of people, I think, look at it as making it more complex. Hey, we're going to be done here in a moment, but participant 67 brought up a point that occurred to me too when I first heard this. I don't know what possessed them to use the acronym DORA, but it's really going to put a crimp on us in DevOps, right? We use DORA metrics as kind of, it's become a staple of DevOps culture and of DevOps practices. And now it's like, what DORA, where in the world is DORA? And what DORA are we talking about? I wish they would change that, but I'm afraid that train has left the station. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. There's going to be a lot of confusion for sure. That being said, I think we've hit most everything in Q&A. We tried to get to most of your chats. We're coming up on the top of the hour. You know what? Simona, Mav, Preeti, of course, Mitchell, thank you so much for participating. But even more than the four of you, thank you, our audience. I mean, when we got a good audience like this, asking questions, making comments, the time flies by. It's hard for me to keep up. I'm on 3 different machines here trying to answer stuff and look up backgrounds and see what the heck's going on. But it's a great experience. Also, big shout out, thanks to Tricentis. Usually we don't rely on Tricentis to have to man the whole panel, but we needed help this month. And Simona and Mav and Lanier Norville, who's our Tricentis co-producer here. Thank you so much for making this a great success. Mitch, I'm going to give you the last word and we'll finish up.
I'm actually going to go to a question, because mobile brings up a lot of things, and one of them is cross platforms. How do you develop across multiple platforms? And if you were going to do it just through source code and try to maintain it, across iOS and Android and whatever else, that's extremely complex. And there are so many great frameworks. I think things like React Native, and Flutter, a number of things. Engines, for UIs, for 3D rendering like Unreal. There's so many things you can design into your app that help with that. Don't solve all the problems. JavaScript's also a good kind of cross platform. So there's a lot of information on the web available about that kind of thing. So if you're struggling with that, do some checking. I'll put a link into the chat. But it's something everybody's probably had to face at one point in a mobile app, and there's a lot of great resources for that. So wish you good luck on figuring that out for your app.
Excellent. Hey guys, I just put it in chat. It's also pinned to the top of the chat window. We try to make these better all the time, but the only way we can make them better is if we understand what you like and don't like. Take a moment, fill out our survey so that we can continue the feedback loops, iteration, reiterate. We drink our own champagne or eat our own dog food, however you want to look at it here. Thank you all for being with us. We'll see you next. Hey, there's 2 years worth of these DevOps Unbound with some great conversations up on Techstrong.tv. You can check them out there. Just go to Techstrong.tv, look up DevOps Unbound, and you can catch up on old episodes. We'll have fresh episodes out there as well. And we'll see you next month here on our live roundtable edition of Techstrong TV, of DevOps Unbound, excuse me. Until then, everyone, thanks. This is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong. We're out.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.